The locksmith's drill whined against the bedroom wall, drowning out my daughter-in-law's protests from the hallway, where 2 police officers held her back. At 72 years old, I'd seen enough manipulation in my life to recognize it. But I'd never imagined discovering what Marcus Chen would find inside my own walls. The yellow dust from the drywall settled on my shoulders like accusations I should have listened to months ago. My name is Beatrice Holland, and for 43 years, I'd lived in this 3-bedroom ranch house on Maple Drive in suburban Columbus, Ohio. My late husband Gerald and I had raised our son Timothy here, celebrated every holiday, survived every storm. The morning Timothy introduced me to Shayna 5 years ago, I'd welcomed her with the same open heart I'd given to everything in my life. She was 29 then, pretty in that polished way some young women achieve with the right makeup and careful smiles, working as a paralegal at a downtown firm. Timothy, at 34, looked at her like she hung the moon, and I wanted nothing more than my son's happiness. The wedding was elegant, held at the conservatory downtown with white roses everywhere, and Shayna's family filling most of the pews. Her mother, Patricia, wore a fixed smile that never reached her eyes, and her father barely spoke to anyone. I should have paid more attention to that, but I was too busy being grateful that Timothy had found someone, too relieved that he wouldn't be alone after Gerald's death 2 years earlier had left both of us adrift. For the first 3 years of their marriage, everything seemed fine. They lived in a modern apartment in the short north, visited every other Sunday for dinner, called on holidays. Shayna was pleasant enough, always complimenting my cooking, asking about my garden, listening to my stories about Timothy's childhood with what seemed like genuine interest. I noticed small things, how she'd steer conversations away from anything too personal, how her compliments felt rehearsed, how she never shared much about her own life. But I attributed it to her being private, reserved, still warming up to me. Then Gerald's life insurance money came through, $350,000, carefully saved and invested over decades of his work as an electrical engineer. The letter from the insurance company arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, 2 years and 4 months after his death. Administrative delays, they explained. Complications with the policy. Apologies for the wait. I stood in my kitchen holding that check, remembering how Gerald had always said, this is for you to live comfortably, to never worry, to have security. I deposited it immediately, told Timothy about it that same evening when he called. His response was warm, relieved. I'm so glad, Mom. Dad would want you taken care of. You deserve to enjoy it. Maybe travel, fix up the house, whatever makes you happy. I heard Shayna's voice in the background. Couldn't make out the words, but Timothy's tone shifted slightly. Shayna says congratulations, Mom. She's really happy for you. 2 weeks later, they showed up on a Saturday morning without calling first. Shayna carried a basket of cleaning supplies and wore old jeans and a faded t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Surprise! She announced, breezing past me into the house. I know how hard it's been keeping up with everything since you're alone now, Beatrice. I took the whole day off, and I'm going to help you spring clean. Top to bottom, we're going to make this place shine. I stood in the doorway, confused. It was mid-April, mild weather. My house was reasonably clean. That's very thoughtful, Shayna, but really it's not necessary. I managed just fine. Nonsense. She was already in the kitchen, opening cabinets. You're not getting any younger, and this house is a lot for one person. Timothy told me how his dad always handled the heavy cleaning, the hard-to-reach places. Let me help. It's what family does. Timothy shrugged apologetically. She insisted, Mom. You know how she gets when she wants to help someone. Just let her do her thing and I'll help too. We'll have the place looking great by dinner. Something about the whole situation felt off, but I couldn't articulate what. They were offering help, being kind, showing concern. What kind of ungrateful person turns that away? So I agreed, made coffee, and watched as Shayna began what she called a deep clean that felt more like an invasion. She started in the living room, moving furniture, taking down pictures, insisting we needed to really get behind everything. She opened drawers in the sideboard, examined the contents, suggested I probably didn't need all these old papers, these outdated receipts, these letters from Gerald's company. Let's clear out the clutter, make room for new memories, she said. Her voice bright and helpful. I saved what I could, intercepting papers she'd designated for the trash, feeling more and more uncomfortable but unable to explain why. Timothy worked in the garage, organizing tools, not seeing how thorough Shayna was being in the house, how she was going through everything like she was cataloging assets. By afternoon, she'd moved to the bedrooms. "Let me tackle the guest room, Beatrice. You rest, have some tea. You've been on your feet all morning." The guest room was where I kept important documents. Tax returns, property deeds, Gerald's military records from his 2 years of service in the early 70s. I'd organized everything in filing boxes, labeled and dated. "I'll help with that room," I said, following her. "There are important papers in there." "Exactly why you should supervise," she agreed quickly. "You can tell me what to keep and what to toss. I'll be your hands, you be the brain. Perfect teamwork." We spent 2 hours going through those boxes. Shayna made piles, asked questions, took photos of documents, so you'll have digital backups, Beatrice, in case anything happens. She was particularly interested in financial statements, insurance papers, the deed to the house. "Just want to make sure everything's in order," she explained. "You'd be surprised how many elderly people lose track of important documents, and then there's chaos when something happens. I see it at the law firm all the time. Elderly. The word stung, though she'd said it casually, kindly, as if she were just being practical. I was 72, not ancient, not incompetent. I walked 4 miles every morning, volunteered at the library twice a week, managed my finances perfectly well. But Shayna's tone suggested someone fragile, someone who needed protection from their own limitations. By the time they left that evening, my house was indeed cleaner, but I felt violated in a way I couldn't name. Things were moved, reorganized, improved, according to Shayna's standards. She'd thrown away items I hadn't agreed to discard, including a box of Gerald's old work notebooks that I found in the trash after they left, and immediately rescued. She'd rearranged my kitchen cabinets more efficiently, which meant I couldn't find anything for the next week, and she'd taken multiple photos of documents I never gave her permission to photograph. The next Saturday, she showed up again. Same outfit, same basket of supplies, same cheerful insistence. "Round 2. We barely made a dent last week. Today we tackle the basement and the attic." "Shayna, I appreciate the help, but I didn't ask for this. I'm comfortable with my house the way it is." Her face fell, disappointment clouding her features. "Oh, I thought I was being helpful. I took time off work, arranged my whole weekend around this. Timothy said you'd be grateful." She pulled out her phone, texted rapidly. Within minutes, Timothy called. "Mom, Shayna's really hurt. She's just trying to help you, and you're acting like she's doing something wrong. Can't you just let her be kind? It makes her happy to help you." The guilt was immediate and crushing. Was I being ungrateful? Paranoid? Reading malice into kindness? "I'm sorry," I found myself saying to Shayna. "Of course you can help. I'm just not used to having so much assistance." She brightened immediately. "I totally understand. It's hard to accept help sometimes. But that's what I'm here for, Beatrice. To make your life easier." The basement was finished from Gerald's years of weekend projects. Paneled walls, drop ceiling, his workshop area still set up with tools I couldn't bear to remove. Shayna went through everything with the same thorough intensity, asking questions about value, about whether I planned to keep this or that, about what Timothy might want someday. She was particularly interested in Gerald's tool collection, some of which was quite valuable. "These vintage wrenches could be worth something," she mused. "And this drill press, this lathe, you should get them appraised." "They're not for sale," I said firmly. "They were Gerald's. They stay here." Of course. I'm just saying if you ever needed money, you have assets. That's important to know." She photographed the workshop from multiple angles. "For insurance purposes," she claimed. In the attic, she found boxes I hadn't opened in years. Christmas decorations, Timothy's childhood toys, old photo albums, Gerald's military uniform. She went through it all, commenting on what could be donated, what was taking up valuable space, what was probably just junk by now. I watched her handle Gerald's uniform with casual indifference, fold it carelessly, and something hardened in my chest. "That's enough for today," I said. my voice sharper than I intended. "I'm tired. Thank you for your help, but I need you to go now." She looked startled, then concerned. "Are you feeling okay? Do you need me to call Timothy? Maybe you should sit down, have some water." "I'm fine. I just need my house to myself." After she left, I went through the attic again, checking what she'd touched, what she'd moved. Nothing was missing. I verified that carefully, but everything felt contaminated somehow. Examined, assessed, valued. The third Saturday, I didn't answer the door when she knocked. I watched from the bedroom window as she stood on the porch, knocking persistently, finally calling Timothy. My phone rang immediately. "Mom, are you okay? Shayna's at your door and you're not answering. She's worried sick. Are you hurt? Should she call an ambulance?" "I'm fine, Timothy. I just don't want company today." "She drove all the way from downtown to help you. The least you could do is let her in and tell her you don't need help." "I've told her multiple times I don't need this much help. She doesn't listen." His sigh was heavy with frustration. "She's trying to be a good daughter-in-law, Mom. She's trying to ease your burden. Why are you being so difficult about this? Difficult. Ungrateful. Paranoid." The words piled up like accusations. Was I wrong? Was this normal family help that I was rejecting out of stubbornness or pride? I watched Shayna through the window, saw her concerned expression. Her phone pressed to her ear as she spoke to Timothy, probably painting me as a confused old woman who didn't understand that people cared about her. I opened the door. "Oh, thank God," she breathed, genuine relief on her face. "Beatrice, you scared me. I thought something had happened. Are you sure you're feeling okay? Have you been eating properly? Sleeping well?" And there it was. The subtle implication that I wasn't capable, wasn't managing, needed supervision, but delivered with such apparent concern that rejecting it made me seem unreasonable. That day, she focused on my bedroom. "When's the last time you really cleaned in here? Behind the furniture? In the closets? Under the bed?" She moved my dresser, my nightstands, went through my closet with the same systematic thoroughness. She found the small safe where I kept my important jewelry. My engagement ring, my mother's pearls, some savings bonds. "Is this bolted down?" she asked, jiggling it. "Beatrice, this isn't secure. Someone could just carry this right out. You should really have this properly installed. Maybe in a closet. Maybe behind a false panel or something. I saw this thing on HGTV where they built a secret compartment into the wall. Much safer than just having a safe sitting on the closet floor. It's fine where it is. But what if there's a break-in? What if something happens to you and Timothy needs to access important documents? Wouldn't it be better to have a really secure spot? Somewhere built into the house itself?" I didn't answer, just watched as she measured the wall, tapped on it as if testing for studs, made notes on her phone. "I know a great contractor," she said. "Guy who does work for one of the lawyers at my firm. He could install something really secure, really professional. I could get you a quote." "No, thank you." She shrugged, smiled. "Just trying to help you protect what's yours, Beatrice." The following Tuesday, a contractor showed up at my door. Young man, early 30s, carrying a clipboard and wearing a shirt with Reliable Home Services embroidered on the pocket. "Mrs. Holland, I'm here to give you a quote on the security installation. Your daughter-in-law Shayna set up the appointment." "I didn't request any appointment." He checked his clipboard, confused. "She said you'd agreed to this, that you wanted a hidden safe installed in your bedroom wall. She gave me the address. Said to come Tuesday at 10 a.m. I sent him away, then called Timothy at work. "Your wife is sending contractors to my house without my permission. She's trying to help you improve your security, Mom. She told me about that safe just sitting on your closet floor. Anyone could steal it. She's right to be concerned. It's my house, Timothy. My safe, my decisions. I don't want contractors here. I don't want her rearranging my life. I don't want any more help that I didn't ask for." His silence was long and heavy. "I'll talk to her. But Mom, honestly, you're being really resistant to someone who's just trying to care about you. It's making things difficult for me, being caught between my wife and my mother. Caught between. As if we were equal forces pulling at him, rather than his mother of 34 years. and a woman he'd known for 5. But I swallowed my resentment, apologized for creating stress, promised to be more appreciative. Shayna called that evening crying. "I'm so sorry, Beatrice. I overstepped. I just worry about you so much, alone in that big house with all those valuables. I should have asked you first before calling the contractor. I just got excited about helping you be safer. Please forgive me." How could I not forgive someone who sounded so genuinely sorry, so sincerely concerned? "It's all right, Shayna. I know you meant well. Let's just agree you'll check with me before arranging anything at my house, okay?" "Absolutely. You're right, it's your home, your rules. I promise, no more surprises." She kept that promise for exactly 2 weeks. The next surprise came when I received a call from my bank. "Mrs. Holland, we wanted to verify a request we received regarding your account. Someone claiming to be your daughter-in-law called, asking about adding herself as a joint account holder, saying you'd discussed this for estate planning purposes. We wanted to confirm this with you directly before proceeding." My blood ran cold. "I've made no such request. Do not add anyone to my account." "Understood, ma'am. We'll make a note in your file. For security purposes, would you like to add a verbal password to your account? That way, anyone calling about your finances would need to provide it." I set up the password, hung up, and sat at my kitchen table shaking with anger, and something deeper, fear. This wasn't helpful spring cleaning. This wasn't concerned family support. This was something else entirely. Something calculating and deliberate. I called Timothy immediately. "Did you know Shayna tried to add herself to my bank account?" "What?" "No, there must be some mistake." The bank called to verify. She told them we'd discussed it for estate planning. "Let me call her. There has to be an explanation." The explanation came an hour later, delivered by a tearful Shayna at my front door. "I'm so embarrassed. One of the lawyers at work was telling me about how important it is for elderly people to have someone on their accounts in case of emergency, in case something happens, and bills need to be paid. I got worried about you, Beatrice, and I thought I was being proactive. I should have talked to you first. I realize now how that looked, how inappropriate it was. I'm so sorry." Timothy stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders. "She made a mistake, Mom, but her heart was in the right place. Can we please move past this?" I wanted to scream that hearts in right places don't lie to banks. Don't try to access other people's money without permission. Don't manipulate and scheme. But Timothy was looking at me with such pleading in his eyes, such clear desire for peace, and Shayna was crying with what looked like genuine remorse. "I accept your apology," I said, the words tasting like ash. "But Shayna, you need to understand. My finances are my business, not yours, not even Timothy's unless I choose to make them so. This kind of thing can't happen again." "Never," she promised. "I've learned my lesson. I'll stay completely out of your financial business." She lasted 3 weeks. This time it was my lawyer who called. Martin Foster had handled Gerald's estate, our wills, our property matters for 20 years. "Beatrice, I received an interesting call today from someone claiming to be your daughter-in-law. She said you wanted to update your will, add provisions for her and Timothy, establish some trusts. She was fishing for information about your current estate plan, asking very specific questions about asset distribution." "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. I told her that I only discuss client matters with the client directly, and that if you wanted to make changes to your will, you'd need to call me yourself. I'm calling now because this seemed concerning. It is concerning. She has no authority to discuss my legal matters with anyone." "Would you like me to send her a formal letter to that effect?" "Please do." When Timothy found out about the letter, he exploded. "You're threatening my wife with legal action? Over a misunderstanding? She was trying to help you organize your affairs. She was trying to access information about my will, Timothy. Information she has no right to. She's my wife. She's your family. Why are you treating her like some kind of criminal?" "Because she's acting like one." The words hung between us, sharp and irretrievable. Timothy's face went white, then red. "I can't believe you just said that. After everything she's tried to do for you. All the time and effort she's put into helping you, caring about you, worrying about you. And this is how you repay her? By calling her a criminal? Timothy, please listen to me. Really listen. This pattern of behavior. The constant cleaning that's really searching through my things. The photos of my documents, trying to access my bank account, calling my lawyer. This isn't normal concern. This is something else. This is you being paranoid and ungrateful. She loves you, Mom. She wants to help you. And you're so suspicious, so closed off. You can't even accept love when it's offered. He left, and for the first time in 34 years, my son didn't call me for 2 weeks. No Sunday dinners, no midweek check-ins, no random calls to share something funny or ask my advice. The silence was devastating. After she left, I went through the attic again, checking what she'd touched, what she'd moved. Nothing was missing. I verified that carefully, but everything felt contaminated somehow. Examined, assessed, valued. The third Saturday, I didn't answer the door when she knocked. I watched from the bedroom window as she stood on the porch, knocking persistently, finally calling Timothy. My phone rang immediately. Mom, are you okay? Shayna's at your door and you're not answering. She's worried sick. Are you hurt? Should she call an ambulance? I'm fine, Timothy. I just don't want company today. She drove all the way from downtown to help you. The least you could do is let her in and tell her you don't need help. I've told her multiple times I don't need this much help. She doesn't listen. His sigh was heavy with frustration. She's trying to be a good daughter-in-law, Mom. She's trying to ease your burden. Why are you being so difficult about this? Difficult. Ungrateful. Paranoid. The words piled up like accusations. Was I wrong? Was this normal family help that I was rejecting out of stubbornness or pride? I watched Shayna through the window, saw her concerned expression. Her phone pressed to her ear as she spoke to Timothy, probably painting me as a confused old woman who didn't understand that people cared about her. I opened the door. Oh, thank God. She breathed, genuine relief on her face. Beatrice, you scared me. I thought something had happened. Are you sure you're feeling okay? Have you been eating properly? Sleeping well? And there it was. The subtle implication that I wasn't capable, wasn't managing, needed supervision, but delivered with such apparent concern that rejecting it made me seem unreasonable. That day, she focused on my bedroom. When's the last time you really cleaned in here? Behind the furniture? In the closets? Under the bed? She moved my dresser, my nightstands, went through my closet with the same systematic thoroughness. She found the small safe where I kept my important jewelry, my engagement ring, my mother's pearls, some savings bonds. Is this bolted down? She asked, jiggling it. Beatrice, this isn't secure. Someone could just carry this right out. You should really have this properly installed. Maybe in a closet. Maybe behind a false panel or something. I saw this thing on HGTV where they built a secret compartment into the wall. Much safer than just having a safe sitting on the closet floor. It's fine where it is. But what if there's a break-in? What if something happens to you and Timothy needs to access important documents? Wouldn't it be better to have a really secure spot? Somewhere built into the house itself? I didn't answer. Just watched as she measured the wall, tapped on it as if testing for studs, made notes on her phone. I know a great contractor, she said. Guy who does work for one of the lawyers at my firm. He could install something really secure, really professional. I could get you a quote. No, thank you. She shrugged, smiled. Just trying to help you protect what's yours, Beatrice. The following Tuesday, a contractor showed up at my door. Young man, early 30s, carrying a clipboard and wearing a shirt with Reliable Home Services embroidered on the pocket. Mrs. Holland, I'm here to give you a quote on the security installation. Your daughter-in-law Shayna set up the appointment. I didn't request any appointment. He checked his clipboard, confused. She said you'd agreed to this, that you wanted a hidden safe installed in your bedroom wall. She gave me the address, said to come Tuesday at 10 a.m. I sent him away, then called Timothy at work. Your wife is sending contractors to my house without my permission. She's trying to help you improve your security, Mom. She told me about that safe just sitting on your closet floor. Anyone could steal it. She's right to be concerned. It's my house, Timothy. My safe, my decisions. I don't want contractors here. I don't want her rearranging my life. I don't want any more help that I didn't ask for." His silence was long and heavy. "I'll talk to her. But Mom, honestly, you're being really resistant to someone who's just trying to care about you. It's making things difficult for me, being caught between my wife and my mother. Caught between. As if we were equal forces pulling at him, rather than his mother of 34 years, and a woman he'd known for 5. But I swallowed my resentment, apologized for creating stress, promised to be more appreciative." Shayna called that evening crying. "I'm so sorry, Beatrice. I overstepped. I just worry about you so much, alone in that big house with all those valuables. I should have asked you first before calling the contractor. I just got excited about helping you be safer. Please forgive me." How could I not forgive someone who sounded so genuinely sorry, so sincerely concerned? "It's all right, Shayna. I know you meant well. Let's just agree you'll check with me before arranging anything at my house, okay?" "Absolutely. You're right, it's your home, your rules. I promise, no more surprises." She kept that promise for exactly 2 weeks. The next surprise came when I received a call from my bank. "Mrs. Holland, we wanted to verify a request we received regarding your account. Someone claiming to be your daughter-in-law called, asking about adding herself as a joint account holder, saying you'd discussed this for estate planning purposes. We wanted to confirm this with you directly before proceeding." My blood ran cold. "I've made no such request. Do not add anyone to my account." "Understood, ma'am. We'll make a note in your file. For security purposes, would you like to add a verbal password to your account? That way, anyone calling about your finances would need to provide it." I set up the password, hung up, and sat at my kitchen table shaking with anger, and something deeper, fear. This wasn't helpful spring cleaning. This wasn't concerned family support. This was something else entirely. Something calculating and deliberate. I called Timothy immediately. "Did you know Shayna tried to add herself to my bank account?" "What?" "No, there must be some mistake." The bank called to verify. She told them we'd discussed it for estate planning. "Let me call her. There has to be an explanation." The explanation came an hour later, delivered by a tearful Shayna at my front door. "I'm so embarrassed. One of the lawyers at work was telling me about how important it is for elderly people to have someone on their accounts in case of emergency. In case something happens, and bills need to be paid. I got worried about you, Beatrice, and I thought I was being proactive. I should have talked to you first. I realize now how that looked, how inappropriate it was. I'm so sorry." Timothy stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders. "She made a mistake, Mom, but her heart was in the right place. Can we please move past this?" I wanted to scream that hearts in right places don't lie to banks. Don't try to access other people's money without permission. Don't manipulate and scheme. But Timothy was looking at me with such pleading in his eyes, such clear desire for peace, and Shayna was crying with what looked like genuine remorse. "I accept your apology," I said, the words tasting like ash. "But Shayna, you need to understand. My finances are my business, not yours, not even Timothy's unless I choose to make them so. This kind of thing can't happen again." "Never," she promised. "I've learned my lesson. I'll stay completely out of your financial business." She lasted 3 weeks. This time it was my lawyer who called. Martin Foster had handled Gerald's estate, our wills, our property matters for 20 years. "Beatrice, I received an interesting call today from someone claiming to be your daughter-in-law. She said you wanted to update your will, add provisions for her and Timothy, establish some trusts. She was fishing for information about your current estate plan, asking very specific questions about asset distribution." "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. I told her that I only discuss client matters with the client directly, and that if you wanted to make changes to your will, you'd need to call me yourself. I'm calling now because this seemed concerning. It is concerning. She has no authority to discuss my legal matters with anyone. Would you like me to send her a formal letter to that effect?" "Please do." When Timothy found out about the letter, he exploded. "You're threatening my wife with legal action? Over a misunderstanding? She was trying to help you organize your affairs. She was trying to access information about my will, Timothy. Information she has no right to. She's my wife. She's your family. Why are you treating her like some kind of criminal? Because she's acting like one. The words hung between us, sharp and irretrievable. Timothy's face went white, then red. I can't believe you just said that. After everything she's tried to do for you. All the time and effort she's put into helping you, caring about you, worrying about you. And this is how you repay her? By calling her a criminal? Timothy, please listen to me. Really listen. This pattern of behavior. The constant cleaning that's really searching through my things. The photos of my documents, trying to access my bank account, calling my lawyer. This isn't normal concern. This is something else. This is you being paranoid and ungrateful. She loves you, Mom. She wants to help you. And you're so suspicious, so closed off. You can't even accept love when it's offered. He left, and for the first time in 34 years, my son didn't call me for 2 weeks. No Sunday dinners, no midweek check-ins, no random calls to share something funny or ask my advice. The silence was devastating. If necessary. If it's the only way to protect you from yourself and ensure Timothy gets what he deserves. Think about that, Beatrice. Think about which option sounds better. Moving voluntarily to a nice community and transferring assets willingly. Or forcing us to take legal action that would be expensive, public, and humiliating for everyone involved. She left, slamming the door behind her. I stood in my living room, shaking with rage and fear, understanding finally and completely what I was dealing with. This wasn't about care or concern or family love. This was about money, plain and simple. Shayna had married Timothy, seeing him as a future inheritance. And every day I remained alive and independent was a delay in her plans. I called Martin Foster immediately, told him everything. His response was swift and serious. Beatrice, threats of forced guardianship are serious. They're also very difficult to accomplish if the person is genuinely competent. But they can be expensive and traumatic to fight. We need to protect you proactively. Over the next week, we built a fortress. Updated medical documentation from my doctor confirming my excellent physical and mental health. Letters from my banker, my financial advisor, my accountant, all attesting to my competent management of my affairs. Dated and witnessed videos of me discussing my intentions, my wishes, my capabilities. A comprehensive file proving beyond doubt that I was of sound mind and body, managing my life independently and well. I also hired a private investigator. His name was Robert Chen, recommended by Martin, former police detective turned private investigator. I told him everything, showed him my documentation of Shayna's pattern, asked him to find out what else I didn't know. What he found was devastating. Shayna had been married before, twice. Both marriages to older men, both ending in the men's deaths within 3 years. The first husband, James, had died in a fall down basement stairs in their home. Accidental death, the police had ruled, though the investigator's report noted some inconsistencies in Shayna's account of events. She'd inherited his house, his savings, his life insurance, approximately $220,000 total. The second husband, Michael, had died of an accidental overdose of his heart medication. Again ruled accidental, again with some questions about how someone could mistakenly take quadruple their normal dose. Shayna had inherited everything again. House, savings, investments, life insurance, totaling nearly $400,000. Both times she'd played the grieving widow perfectly. Both times she'd sold the houses immediately, liquidated assets, disappeared with the money. Both times she'd resurfaced a year or 2 later, working a professional job, looking for the next opportunity. Timothy was her third opportunity, and I was the obstacle standing between her and what she saw as her rightful payout. Robert laid out the files on my dining room table. Mrs. Holland, I can't prove she killed those men. The police investigated, found no evidence of foul play. But the pattern is undeniable. She targets men with aging parents, significant inheritances coming. She marries them, gets access to the family, starts working on the parent. Isolation, manipulation. Getting them to transfer assets or change wills. If that doesn't work fast enough, sometimes the parent has an accident. Sometimes the spouse has an accident. She's patient, she's careful, and she's very, very good at playing the concerned family member. Timothy doesn't know any of this. Almost certainly not. She would have hidden her past completely. Different last names from the marriages, moves between states. Enough time passing that casual background checks wouldn't reveal anything. I had to dig deep to find this. I have to tell him. You do. But Mrs. Holland, be prepared. She's been grooming him for years to see you as paranoid. Has the problem. She's going to deny everything. Paint this as you hiring investigators to attack her. As you being so desperate to keep your money that you're inventing wild conspiracy theories. And she might convince him, at least at first. I knew he was right, but I had to try. I called Timothy, asked him to come over alone. It's important. Please, just you, just for an hour. He arrived looking wary, defensive. If this is another attack on Shayna, just sit. Please, look at this information. All of it, before you say anything. I showed him everything. The documentation of Shayna's inquiries into my finances. The investigator's report on her previous marriages. The death certificates of James and Michael. The inheritance records. The timeline showing her pattern of behavior across 3 relationships, spanning 15 years. He sat at my dining room table, reading page after page, his face cycling through disbelief, denial, confusion, horror. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet. This can't be real. There has to be some explanation. Maybe these are different people with the same name. Maybe... Timothy. I placed the investigator's photos in front of him. Shayna at James's funeral, young and tearful. Shayna at Michael's funeral, older but still playing the grieving widow. Shayna at your wedding. The same woman. The same calculating eyes beneath the tears. It's her. You know it's her. He stared at the photos for a long time, his hands trembling. Why didn't this come up when we... I mean, I would have found something when we were dating, when we got engaged. She's careful. Different last names, moves between states, years passing between marriages. Robert said she's very good at erasing her trail. You'd have needed a deep investigation to find any of this. And why would you? You were in love. You trusted her. Oh, God. He put his head in his hands. Oh, God, Mom, what have I done? I've been defending her, choosing her over you, letting her isolate me from you while she... His voice broke. While she what? Was she planning to kill you? To kill me? What was her endgame? I sat beside him, put my arm around his shoulders the way I had when he was a boy with a broken heart or a failed test. I don't know for certain, but I think she was trying to pressure me into transferring assets, moving into assisted living, giving her access to my money. And if that didn't work, if I remained stubborn and healthy, then maybe an accident would happen. A fall downstairs, like James. An overdose of medication, like Michael. Something that would look tragic but not suspicious. And then what about me? Once she had the inheritance, would I be next? Another accidental death? Another grieving widow walking away with everything? Robert thinks that's possible. The pattern suggests she's willing to be patient, to wait for the right moment. But yes, eventually, you might have become a liability rather than an asset. Timothy stood abruptly, paced the room, ran his hands through his hair in the gesture he'd had since childhood when overwhelmed. I have to confront her. I have to hear her explain this, deny this, something. I can't just accept that my wife is a... He couldn't say the word. If you confront her without a plan, she'll run. She's done it before. Or worse, she might do something desperate. We need to be smart about this, safe about this. What do you suggest? I'd been thinking about this since Robert first showed me his findings. We need evidence that would hold up legally. Not just of her past, but of her current intentions toward us. We need her to reveal herself, on record, in a way that can't be denied or explained away. How? That's when I thought of the walls. The idea came from Shayna's own suggestion months ago about hiding a safe in the wall, about secret compartments. If she believed there were assets hidden in the house, hidden in a way that suggested paranoia or incompetence, she might make a move that would expose her completely. I explained the plan to Timothy. He would tell Shayna that he'd finally convinced me to sell the house and move to assisted living, that I'd agreed to transfer assets to him now to avoid estate taxes, but that I'd confess something to him in a moment of confusion, that I'd hidden cash in the walls, money I'd been taking out of the bank in small amounts for months because I didn't trust banks anymore. That I couldn't quite remember where I'd hidden it all. That I was getting confused about which walls, which rooms. That I might need help finding it all before the house sold. The plan would play into everything Shayna believed about me. That I was elderly, becoming incompetent, hiding assets irrationally. It would also present an irresistible opportunity. Cash hidden in walls, in a house about to be sold, in the possession of a confused old woman and her trusting son. She wouldn't be able to resist. But, Mom, there's no actual cash in the walls. What happens when she goes looking and finds nothing? There will be something in the walls. Not cash, but something that will prove her intentions. We're going to give her exactly the opportunity she's been waiting for. With Martin Foster's help, we refined the plan. Robert Chen provided technical expertise. And Timothy, heartbroken but determined, agreed to play his part. First, we needed to establish the setup. Timothy went home and had a conversation with Shayna. One we recorded with his consent through a device Robert provided. Timothy was nervous, his voice tight, but he delivered the lines we'd rehearsed. Shayna, you were right about Mom. I talked to her today, really sat down and had a serious conversation. And I think she's not doing as well as we thought. She agreed to sell the house, to move to Whispering Pines Assisted Living. She's even agreed to transfer some assets to us now. Shayna's response was immediately enthusiastic. Oh, Timothy, that's wonderful. I'm so relieved. This is the right decision for everyone. When does she want to list the house? That's the thing. She told me something kind of concerning. She's been taking cash out of the bank, thousands of dollars over the past months, because she says she doesn't trust the banks anymore. And she's been hiding it in the walls. A pause. In the walls? Like inside the walls of the house? Yeah. She got it into her head that it would be safer there than in the bank. She had some handyman help her cut openings, put the cash inside, seal it back up. But now she can't quite remember where all of it is. She thinks maybe the bedroom wall, or possibly the guest room, or maybe the basement. She's getting confused about it. Another pause. Longer. How much money are we talking about? She thinks maybe $60,000 or $70,000 total. She's been withdrawing $2,000 or $3,000 at a time for months. Oh, and some jewelry too. Pieces she thought might get stolen if she left them in the safe. She says she wrapped them in plastic and put them in the walls for safekeeping. Timothy, that's... Shayna's voice was carefully concerned. That's actually a symptom of dementia, you know? Hiding things, becoming paranoid about banks, not remembering where things are. This is exactly what I've been worried about. I know. You were right all along. I should have listened to you sooner. We need to find that money before the house sells, before it ends up being accidentally thrown away by construction workers or something. When can we go over there and look? That's the problem. Mom's really embarrassed about this whole thing. She made me promise not to tell you, not to tell anyone. She knows it sounds crazy. I think if we show up together, she'll shut down. Maybe even deny the whole thing. So what do you suggest? Timothy's voice was perfect. Hesitant, conflicted, ultimately persuaded. What if you went over there when she's out? She has her library volunteer shift on Thursday afternoons, 2 to 5. The house would be empty. You could look for the money, find it, and we could present it to her as a relief, like we're helping her get organized. She wouldn't have to be embarrassed, and we'd secure the cash before anything happens to it. The silence stretched so long I wondered if Shayna had seen through it. Then her voice came, carefully casual. I suppose that could work. It would save her the embarrassment. And you're right. We need to secure that money. Do you know which walls she might have used? She mentioned the bedroom, I think. Maybe the wall behind her dresser? Or possibly the guest room closet. She wasn't very clear. Okay. Thursday afternoon when she's at the library. I'll take a personal day from work. Do you want to come with me? I can't. I have that presentation at 2. But you can handle it, right? Just look for any irregularities in the walls. Any places that have been repaired or painted recently. The money should be in bundles, the jewelry in plastic bags. I'll find it. Don't worry. After Timothy left their apartment that night, he came straight to my house, looking shaken. She bought it. Completely bought it. And Mom, the way she sounded when we talked about the money, when she calculated how much might be there, she wasn't concerned about you. She was calculating her score. I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry you had to see that side of her. What now? Now we prepare the walls. Robert Chen arrived early Wednesday morning with equipment and expertise. We weren't hiding cash in the walls. We were hiding something better. Cameras. Small, wireless, motion-activated cameras with audio recording. The kind used for security systems. We installed them in 3 locations. Behind the dresser in my bedroom where a small section of wall had been carefully cut and resealed. In the guest room closet where another section showed signs of recent repair. And in the basement near Gerald's workshop. The repairs were deliberately obvious to anyone looking closely. Fresh spackle, paint that didn't quite match. Areas that would immediately draw attention from someone searching for hidden compartments. But there was no money, no jewelry, just cameras pointing out at whoever came looking. We also installed a camera in the living room, disguised as a smoke detector, to capture Shayna's entry and movements through the house. And Robert set up his van down the street, monitoring equipment ready to record everything in real time. If she just looks in the walls, finds nothing, and leaves, we have her on breaking and entering, which is something but not much, Robert explained. But I'm betting she does more than that. People who are this calculated, this invested in a long-term plan, they don't give up when the first hiding spot's empty. They search. They tear things apart. They reveal themselves. Thursday morning, I went through my normal routine with heightened awareness that everything was being recorded. I ate breakfast, read the newspaper, dressed carefully. At 1:30, I left for the library, drove my usual route, parked in my usual spot. But I didn't go inside. Instead, Timothy picked me up in his car, parked 2 blocks away, and we drove to Robert's van. At 2:15, Robert's monitors showed Shayna's car pulling into my driveway. She sat for a moment looking at the house, checking her phone. Then she got out, carrying a large canvas bag, and walked to the front door. She didn't knock. She pulled out a key, my house key, which I'd noticed missing from my spare set months ago, during one of her cleaning sessions, and let herself in. The living room camera captured her clearly. She looked around, listening for any sound, confirming the house was empty. Then she smiled, a cold expression nothing like the warm mask she usually wore, and headed straight for the bedroom. The bedroom camera activated as she entered. She went directly to the dresser, pulled it away from the wall, examined the section we'd repaired. "There you are," she murmured, pulling tools from her bag, a utility knife, a pry bar, a hammer. She attacked the wall without hesitation, cutting through the fresh spackle, prying back the drywall section we'd carefully placed. The camera, hidden in the gap we'd created, captured her face perfectly as she reached into the opening, felt around, found nothing but the camera itself. She stared at it for a long moment, realization dawning. Then she grabbed the camera, threw it against the wall, shattering it. But the other cameras kept recording as she moved through the house, fury replacing calculation. She tore apart the guest room closet, ripping into the wall there with vicious strength. When she found another camera, she destroyed that one too. She moved to the basement, found the third camera, smashed it against Gerald's workbench. Then she stood in the middle of the basement, breathing hard, and pulled out her phone. We heard her clearly through the living room camera's audio as she called Timothy. "Timothy, your mother has cameras hidden in her walls. She's been recording the house. This whole thing was a setup." Timothy's response was perfect, confused and concerned. "What, Mom has cameras? Why would she?" "Because she's paranoid. Because she's been watching me, suspecting me, setting traps. That money story was fake, wasn't it? There's no cash in the walls. This was a test, and she used you to set it up. Shayna, slow down. Are you at Mom's house? Why are you there?" The realization that she'd incriminated herself flickered across her face. You said I should look for the money. You suggested I come when she was gone." I said maybe we could help her look together when she was ready to show us. I never told you to break into her house when she wasn't home. Don't you dare try to make this my fault. You knew exactly what you were suggesting. You planted the idea and now you're backtracking to make me look bad. Shayna, I can't believe you'd enter Mom's house without permission. That's breaking and entering. That's illegal. Her laugh was harsh, angry. "Oh, please." St. Timothy, acting shocked. You wanted me to find that money as much as I did. You're just as eager for your inheritance as I am. You're just too weak to admit it. My inheritance? Shayna, what are you talking about? Don't play stupid. Your mother's money, this house, all of it. Everything she's hoarding while we struggle, while we live in a tiny apartment, while we put our lives on hold waiting for her to finally die, or at least have the decency to share what she won't need much longer anyway. Timothy's voice was cold now, the act dropping. Is that what this has been about all along? My mother's money? Of course it's about the money. Why else would I spend years playing the concerned daughter-in-law, pretending to care about that selfish old woman, putting up with her suspicion and her accusations? She's sitting on $500,000 at least, probably more, living alone in a house worth another $300,000. And for what? She's 72 years old, Timothy. She's not going to use it. It should be ours. It should be funding our life, not sitting in her accounts while she plays the independent widow. You never cared about her. About us. This was always about money. Oh, grow up. You think people marry for love? I married you because you're an only child with a wealthy parent. That's the whole game, Timothy. Find the right target, play the long game, cash out. I've done it before, I'll do it again. You've done it before? The cameras captured her face as she realized what she'd said. She tried to recover. I meant, I've been patient before, invested in relationships for the future. That's not a crime. How many times, Shayna? How many husbands before me? This conversation is over. I'm leaving, and when I do, I'm calling a lawyer. Your mother's harassment, her illegal recording, her paranoid accusations. She's going to pay for this. We'll sue her for everything she has. And when we're done, she'll be the one in assisted living with nothing to her name. She stormed up the basement stairs, grabbed her bag from the bedroom and headed for the front door. But she stopped in the living room, looked around, and her eyes fixed on the smoke detector camera. She walked over to it, stared directly into the lens. You think you're so smart, Beatrice. You think you've won. But I've played this game longer than you've suspected I was playing. I know how to make accidents happen. I know how to make old women fall downstairs, take too many pills, have tragic incidents in their own homes. James learned that. Michael learned that. And if you push me, if you try to use any of this against me, you'll learn it too. It was a full confession, delivered in rage directly to the camera. Threats against my life, admission of previous murders. Her entire plan laid bare. Robert was already on the phone with the police before she finished speaking. Shayna left the house, got in her car, and made it exactly 4 blocks before police pulled her over. We watched from Robert's van as they arrested her, read her rights, placed her in the back of the cruiser. She was screaming something, struggling against the handcuffs, her carefully constructed persona completely shattered. Detective Sarah Williams, whom Robert had briefed on the situation, came to the van personally. We've got her. Breaking and entering, destruction of property, and those threats against you, Mrs. Holland. Those give us grounds to investigate her previous husband's deaths. The recordings are solid evidence. She's not talking her way out of this. Timothy sat beside me, watching his wife's arrest through Robert's monitors, tears streaming down his face. I married her, Mom. I brought her into our lives. I defended her against you. If something had happened to you because of my blindness... Nothing happened. We stopped her. You stopped her, Timothy. When it mattered, when you saw the truth, you helped protect us both. How did you know? How did you see what she was when I couldn't? I thought about all those small moments, those incremental invasions, those tiny violations that added up to a pattern. Because I've lived longer. Because I've seen more people, more situations. Because I wasn't blinded by love the way you were. And maybe because mothers have instincts about threats to their children, even when those threats come wrapped in pretty packages with wedding rings. The legal process that followed was extensive and exhausting. Shayna was charged initially with breaking and entering, destruction of property, and making terroristic threats. But as police investigated her past more thoroughly, using Robert's research as a starting point, the charges expanded. James's death was re-examined. The basement stairs where he'd fallen showed evidence of modification. Someone had made the top step slightly shorter than the others, creating an imperceptible height difference that would cause someone descending to miscalculate and fall. The modification had been dismissed originally as old house settlement, but with new context, it was clearly deliberate. Shayna's fingerprints were found on the tools used to alter the step, tools she'd kept in storage for years, probably as insurance or trophies. Michael's death revealed even more. Toxicology reports were reviewed, and experts testified that the level of medication in his system couldn't have been accidentally self-administered. Someone had ground up multiple pills and mixed them into food or drink. Shayna's computer search history from that time, recovered from an old laptop she'd sold but never properly wiped, showed searches for how much heart medication is lethal and undetectable ways to administer medication in the weeks before Michael's death. Both deaths were reclassified as homicides. Shayna was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Her trial was a media sensation. "Black Widow caught by elderly target," the headline screamed. 3 marriages, 2 murders, 1 close call. The prosecution presented the pattern clearly. Marry men with inheritances coming. Isolate them from family. Speed up the inheritance through murder when patience wore thin. I was called to testify about her behavior toward me, her systematic attempts to access my finances, her threats on the recording. Shayna's defense tried to paint me as a paranoid old woman who'd entrapped an innocent younger woman out of jealousy and possessiveness. They claimed the wall cameras were proof of my instability, that I'd manipulated Timothy against his wife, that Shayna's frustrated words on the recording were taken out of context. But the evidence was overwhelming. The previous husband's deaths, the pattern of financial manipulation, her own recorded confession and threats. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on both murder charges. Guilty on all charges related to her actions toward me. She was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms, without possibility of parole. I was in the courtroom when the sentence was read. Shayna looked at me across the room, and for just a moment, the mask was completely gone. No tears, no pleading, no performance. Just cold hatred and calculation. The real woman who'd been hiding beneath the concerned daughter-in-law act. "You should have just given me the money," she said as bailiffs led her away. "Would have been easier for everyone." The aftermath was complicated. Timothy filed for divorce immediately, but the emotional damage took longer to heal. He blamed himself for bringing Shayna into our lives, for defending her, for almost losing me to her schemes. "I chose her over you, Mom. For months I believed her version of reality instead of trusting you. How do I live with that?" We were sitting in my living room, the same room where this had all started with Shayna's first spring cleaning invasion. I'd had the walls properly repaired, the cameras removed, the house restored, but some damage couldn't be so easily fixed. "You loved someone who turned out to be a lie," I said. "That's not a character flaw, Timothy. That's being human. She was very good at what she did. She fooled police, lawyers, everyone who investigated those previous deaths. She almost fooled me. The fact that you were deceived by someone that's skilled at deception doesn't make you weak or stupid. It makes you someone with a good heart who wanted to believe the best of the person you married. But I hurt you. I called you paranoid, chose her over you, made you doubt yourself." "Yes, and that hurt. But you also listened when it mattered. You helped me gather evidence. You played your part in stopping her. You chose truth over comfort when the moment came. That's what I'm holding on to, Timothy. Not the months of pain, but the moment when you chose right. Healing took time. Timothy moved back home with me for a few months, both of us needing the proximity, the reassurance of each other's presence. He started therapy to process the betrayal, the recognition that someone he'd loved had never existed, that the woman he'd married was a performance designed to access an inheritance. I started therapy too, working through the violation of having my home invaded, my autonomy challenged, my life threatened. I'd been strong through the investigation and trial, focused on the goal of stopping Shayna. But afterward, the trauma caught up with me. Nightmares about falls downstairs, about pills in my water, about waking up to find Shayna in my bedroom. Fear every time the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Anxiety about trusting anyone new in my life. But slowly we both healed. Timothy eventually moved into his own apartment, started dating again with extreme caution, began rebuilding his life. I continued my routines. Morning walks, library volunteering, coffee with friends. But I was different now, warier but also stronger in some ways. I'd trusted my instincts against all opposition, gathered evidence methodically, protected myself and my son from a genuine threat. That knowledge settled into my bones, became part of who I was. The money Shayna had inherited from James and Michael was seized as proceeds of crime. Relatives of both men filed civil suits for wrongful death and were awarded significant settlements. I was contacted by lawyers representing both families, thanking me for uncovering the truth about their loved ones' deaths, for giving them answers and justice they'd thought they'd never receive. James's sister, Patricia, came to visit me 6 months after the trial. She was my age, gray-haired and kind-eyed, carrying a photo album. I wanted to show you who my brother really was, before she took him from us. And I wanted to thank you for seeing what the rest of us missed. We sat in my living room, looking at pictures of James. A laughing man in his 60s, surrounded by family, clearly loved and loving. We thought he'd finally found happiness with Shayna. Patricia said. He'd been widowed young, raised his kids alone, worked so hard. When he met her, he seemed lighter, more joyful. We were happy for him. Then he died, and she took everything. And we grieved, but we never suspected. We thought it was just a tragic accident. She was very good at making things look innocent. Until you. Until she met someone who wouldn't be fooled, wouldn't be manipulated. You saved your son's life, Beatrice. You know that, don't you? If you'd given in, transferred those assets, moved to assisted living like she wanted, Timothy would have been her next victim. Once she had the money, he'd be a loose end. She'd have killed him too. I'd thought about that many times, lying awake at night, imagining the alternative timeline where I'd doubted myself, where I'd accepted Shayna's gaslighting, where I'd been the confused old woman she tried to paint me as. In that timeline, I'd be in assisted living or possibly dead from an accident. And Timothy would be married to a murderer who was just waiting for the right moment to make him her third victim. I almost didn't trust myself, I admitted. She was so convincing, and Timothy believed her so completely. I questioned my own judgment constantly. But you didn't give in. That's the difference between you and us. We wanted to believe in the happy ending so badly that we ignored our doubts. You listened to yours. After Patricia left, I sat with that thought. The value of trusting yourself, even when everyone around you says you're wrong. The importance of paying attention to patterns, to small violations that add up to big dangers. The courage it takes to be called paranoid, difficult, ungrateful, and still stand firm in your truth. I thought about writing a book, about sharing this experience to help other elderly people recognize financial exploitation and manipulation. Martin Foster encouraged it. Your story could protect a lot of vulnerable people, Beatrice. There are thousands of Shaynas out there, targeting elderly people with assets, using family connections to gain access and trust. If you speak out, you might save lives. I considered it seriously, but in the end, I decided my privacy, my peace was worth more than publicity. I'd lived through the trial, the media coverage, the exposure. I didn't want to extend that experience by writing a book that would bring it all back to the surface, that would make me forever the woman who caught the Black Widow, instead of just Beatrice Holland. Retired librarian, mother, widow, survivor. But I did speak privately to elder advocacy groups, to financial advisors who work with elderly clients, to lawyers who handle estate planning. I shared my experience in those settings, teaching people what to look for, how to recognize the patterns of financial exploitation, how to protect themselves and their loved ones. The signs I shared became a checklist. Excessive interest in finances disguised as helpfulness. Attempts to isolate the elderly person from other family or advisors. Pushing for quick decisions about asset transfers or housing changes. Boundary violations disguised as care. Going through papers. Making calls to banks or lawyers. Showing up uninvited. Gaslighting when the elderly person resists. Suggesting they're confused, paranoid, incompetent, and most telling, anger or threats when their access is limited or denied. If someone in your life exhibits these patterns, I'd tell groups, trust your instincts, document everything, seek independent advice, Don't let anyone convince you that protecting yourself is selfish or paranoid. Your assets are yours. Your life is yours. And you have every right to defend both. One woman in her late 70s approached me after one such talk, tears in her eyes. My son-in-law has been doing exactly what you described, pushing me to sell my house, trying to get on my bank accounts, calling me confused when I refuse. I thought I was being unfair to him, ungrateful for his concern. But you've helped me see it clearly. Thank you for giving me permission to trust myself. Those moments made the whole ordeal worthwhile. Every person I helped recognize manipulation, every vulnerable elder I helped protect, they were the meaning that emerged from the trauma. Timothy found his own meaning, too. He went back to school, got a degree in social work, specialized in elder abuse prevention. "Shayna took a lot from me," he said. "My trust, my marriage, years of my life. But she also showed me a problem I didn't know existed. A population that needs advocates. I can't undo what she did, but I can help make sure fewer people fall victim to people like her." He met someone new eventually. Her name was Rebecca, a teacher, divorced with 2 teenage kids, completely financially independent and uninterested in anyone's inheritance. She met me early in their relationship, sat in my kitchen over coffee, and addressed the elephant in the room directly. Timothy told me about Shayna, about everything that happened. "I want you to know, I have my own house, my own savings, my own life. I'm not with your son for anything except him. And I understand if you need to be cautious, if you need time to trust me. After what you went through, wariness isn't paranoia, it's wisdom." I liked her immediately. Not because she said the right things. Shayna had said plenty of right things. But because she understood that trust had to be earned slowly. That my caution was justified. That she had to prove herself through consistent behavior over time. Not through words or performances. She did prove herself. Through small, consistent actions. Respecting my boundaries, never asking about my finances, never pushing for access to my home or my life beyond what I offered. Including me in family plans, but accepting gracefully when I declined. Being present but not intrusive. Helpful but not controlling. Timothy married her 2 years after the trial ended. I gave them my blessing wholeheartedly. Walked Timothy down the aisle in the place where his father should have been, and welcomed Rebecca and her children into our family. Life settled into new patterns. Better patterns. Sunday dinners resumed, but now with Rebecca and her kids, with laughter and genuine warmth. Holidays became full again, the house alive with voices and activity that was chosen, welcomed, not imposed. I stayed in my house, the house Gerald and I built our life in, the house I defended against Shayna's schemes. I made some modifications, a security system with cameras I controlled, a medical alert device that connected to Timothy and to emergency services, a lawyer-drafted power of attorney that would only activate under very specific circumstances with multiple safeguards. But mostly I just lived. I walked my 4 miles every morning, volunteered at the library, had coffee with friends. I managed my finances competently, made my own decisions, maintained my independence. I was exactly what Shayna had tried to paint me as, an elderly woman living alone. But I was the reality, not her fiction. Capable, competent, sharp, and stronger for having survived her. On the 5-year anniversary of Shayna's conviction, Timothy and Rebecca and the kids came over for dinner. We didn't talk about the anniversary specifically, but it was present in the room. The shadow of what could have been versus the light of what was. After dinner, Timothy and I sat on the back porch while Rebecca and the kids cleaned up inside. Their argument about whose turn it was to wash dishes filtering through the screen door. Normal and warm. "Do you ever think about what she said at sentencing?" Timothy asked. "About how it would have been easier if you'd just given her the money." "Sometimes. Would it have been? Easier, I thought about that. Maybe in the short term. Hand over the assets, move where she wanted, surrender my autonomy. It would have avoided the conflict, the investigation, the trial. But easier isn't the same as right, Timothy. And easier definitely isn't the same as safe. If I'd given in, I'd be dead or imprisoned in assisted living I didn't need. You'd possibly be dead too. And she'd be on to her next victim. Nothing about that would have actually been easier. It just would have been quieter. You saved us by being difficult. I smiled at that. By being difficult. By being suspicious. By being exactly the stubborn, paranoid old woman she accused me of being. Yes. Sometimes being difficult is the same thing as being alive. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the garden Gerald had planted 30 years ago. The garden I still tended. In the house behind us, Rebecca was teaching the kids some song, their voices blending in amateur harmony. This was the life I'd fought for, the future I'd protected. Shayna was in prison, would die in prison. Her carefully constructed identity as the caring daughter-in-law replaced forever with the truth of what she was. A predator, a murderer, a woman who saw people as assets to be liquidated. And I was here, in my home, with my family, living on my own terms. The locksmith discovery that spring day, the cameras in the walls instead of the money Shayna expected, had been the beginning of the end for her. But it had been the beginning of something else for me. The beginning of trusting myself, absolutely. Of valuing my instincts over others' opinions. Of understanding that being loved and being safe aren't always the same thing. I was 77 now. 5 years older than when this started. And I'd lived every one of those years on my own terms, in my own house, with my own money, surrounded by people I'd chosen to trust who'd earned that trust through years of consistent, genuine care. Shayna had tried to steal my assets, my home, my autonomy, my life. She'd failed, and in failing, she'd inadvertently given me something. Absolute clarity about my own strength, my own judgment, my own worth. I was Beatrice Holland. I was 77 years old. I'd survived my daughter-in-law's murder plot through vigilance, documentation, and trusting my instincts when everyone said I was wrong. And I was still here. Still standing, still living exactly the life I'd fought to protect. That was my victory. Not just surviving, but thriving. Not just protecting my assets, but reclaiming my narrative from someone who tried to write me as a confused old woman who didn't know her own mind. I knew my mind perfectly. I'd trusted it against all opposition. And I'd been right. 5 years later, that knowledge was the greatest inheritance I could imagine. Not money, not property, but the absolute certainty that I could trust myself, protect myself, and defend my right to live independently and well for as long as I was capable. Shayna had hidden her true intentions behind helpful smiles and spring cleaning. The locksmith had found what she'd hidden in the walls. Not money, but cameras that revealed her completely. And in the process of that revelation, I'd discovered something too. My own resilience, my own strength, my own unshakable certainty about who I was and what I deserved. I was still the woman I'd been before Shayna entered our lives. Kind, generous, loving. But I was also something more now. Vigilant, discerning. Unafraid to be difficult when difficulty meant survival. And I would carry that knowledge with me for whatever years remained, teaching others when I could, protecting myself always, living fully and freely in the house I'd defended, surrounded by the family I'd saved, carrying the legacy of the husband I'd loved, and the values we'd built our life upon. Shayna had tried to bury me in the walls of my own home, metaphorically, if not literally. Instead, those walls had revealed her, caught her, ended her reign of predatory manipulation. The house still stood. I still stood, and that was everything.